From every corner of the world, we have come together. We are bound by a great cause for freedom, justice, and peace. Under the banner of the knee, we all stand united as the struggle surge and soar of people against exploitation. Let us break the chain of oppression, defeat the wars of aggression. With every stride, with every fight, we shall change the world. Dare to struggle, dare to win, the torch of freedom blazing. Wave by wave, let's all march on, rage and seize the dawn. Let us break the chain of oppression, defeat the wars of aggression. With every stride, with every fight, we shall change the world. Let us break the chain of oppression, defeat the wars of aggression. With every stride, with every fight, we shall change the world. With every stride, with every fight, we shall change the world.
Good morning, good evening, and good day to everyone. Welcome and greetings for everyone participating in today's forum. We'll let Paula introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And well, good morning for me because it's morning here, but good evening and good day to everyone else joining us from anywhere else in the world. Thank you for joining us in this very necessary conversation. My name is Paola. I'll be co-facilitating today with Terry, and I'm here representing the committee in solidarity with the people of El Salvador, also known as ILPS. We just wanted to send our solidarity to the global peoples and liberation struggles today, as we were founded by Salvadoran refugees and allies as a grassroots organization to support the guerrilla movement in the 80s that was fighting a military dictatorship backed by the US. Our work over the last 2 years during this critical moment in our societies, as we're seeing so many of our communities affected by COVID, has been to continue accompanying the social movement of El Salvador as they fight against an escalating dictatorship by the Bukele regime, which, interestingly enough, he's Palestinian, but he's pro-Israeli, and a lot of my Palestinian comrades are happy that without knowing that he's a dictator, they have been really happy that he's Palestinian, but the world needs to know that he's a dictator and that he's not a good thing for any oppressed peoples in the world. And we have also been mobilizing around cutting financial aid to the region by the United States government, which sends this money with the intention to strengthen this said regime and regimes across the region. A current campaign we have going on is #EndHarmfulAid in Central America, which is around economic development aid for security and military to the region in El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. We recently released a letter that 130 organizations signed onto. I can link it in the chat below, which is around challenging this White House plan for Central America, which is centered around security, surveillance, and militarization, and really US control in this region. So we just wanted to remind folks and let folks know that although the United States publicly denounces the Bukele regime now, behind closed doors and privately, they're still funding his military apparatus, which to us identifies their actions as having a very imperialistic agenda. And we just wanted to remind folks of that, and just happy to be here. Thank you all for being here in this very important conversation. And I'll go ahead and pass it back on to Terry.
Thank you, Paula. It's great to be here with you and to co-facilitate today. CSPES has been doing powerful work against US military and economic support for El Salvador. So it's great to be in solidarity with the people of El Salvador, and great to be here with you today. I'm based in San Francisco. I'm currently in New York City, but I'm organizing with the International Migrants Alliance. My name is Terry Vallon. We're focused on building the grassroots movement of migrants, refugees, and displaced people around the world, and in solidarity with the people's struggles all over the world. So I'm very happy to be here with all of you today. We will slow down a bit for interpretation. I have to remember that as well. We just wanted to share a few logistics for our forum today. We want everyone to please select the language of choice for our interpretation today. So there's a slide showing there. There's a little globe at the bottom of your screen if you're on your computer. Today we have English, Spanish, and Bahasa Indonesian interpretation available. So English speakers should choose the English channel. Just in case others will speak in one of the non-English languages, you'll be able to hear it in English. And the forum today will be live streamed on the Facebook pages of Migrante International and ILPS, I believe, cross-posted there. So it will be available afterwards. In the chat box, maybe we can share the links for the Migrante International Facebook and the ILPS Facebook pages. So it'll be recorded and available for later viewing on Facebook. And I'll turn it back over to Paula.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. Our forum today will discuss the role of overseas compatriots in national and democratic struggles in their home country, and we'll discuss what migrants can do to advance solidarity and the fights against, and the people's fights against imperialism. This is a very timely topic, as tomorrow, December 18th, is International Migrants Day. And in building the movement of migrants, it is important for us to discuss this topic that will also shape the orientation of our movement.
Great. So without further ado, we would now like to call the chairperson of the International League of People's Struggle, ILPS, Mr. Len Cooper, to give us his opening message.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Paula. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. The ILPS welcomes you all who are attending and taking part in this important forum on the role of overseas compatriots in national and social liberation movements. In particular, we thank and welcome our distinguished leaders and speakers who are assisting with the examination of this question. Commission 15 of the ILPS, which is the commission dealing with the diaspora, refugees and migrant workers, is one of a network of 19 commissions, each of which deals with the 19 central concerns of the ILPS, around which the ILPS organises and mobilises in the interests of the people of the globe. Commission 15 is to be congratulated for organising this webinar on this important topic, and the forum will be conducted on a talk show format where a set of prepared questions are organised for the main speaker, and where some people called reactors give a short response to the inputs of the main speaker. Following this, webinar participants can be involved with questions and interventions. We are delighted to have as the main speaker Professor Jose Maria Sison, long-time chairperson of the ILPS and now Chairman Emeritus of the ILPS. Welcome, Professor Sison. As the reactors, we're also delighted to have involved Mohammed Khatib, the European Coordinator for Sumedan Solidarity Network for Palestinian Political Prisoners, Nilofer Koch, spokesperson for the Commission of Foreign Relations of the Kurdistan National Congress, and Gabrielle Malespin, co-chairperson of New York Borough Resistance. And I apologise for any incorrect pronunciation. This webinar takes place as the crisis of the capitalist system throughout the globe worsens and deepens. The pandemic has exposed the failures and the crisis more so than ever, and no more so than by the existence of hundreds of millions of refugees driven from their homes and countries by economic collapse, by war, by oppression, by climate crisis and destruction of the environment. Only the unity of the refugees with the solidarity of the working people, peasantry and farmers of all lands can change this situation. This forum aims to assist this process and to help build the social and national liberation movements against imperialism which are developing. We wish you all the best in your deliberations and we wish you well for a successful conference. Long live international solidarity and the fight for national and social liberation. Thank you for the opportunity to be involved. Len Cooper, Chair of the International Coordinating Committee of ILPS. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Len Cooper, the current chairperson of the International League of People's Struggles, for those opening remarks. As Len mentioned, today's forum is organized by members and participants in Commission 15 of the ILPS. And I'll just say a little bit about Commission 15. It's one of the study commissions of the ILPS that focuses on the rights and welfare of the diaspora, refugees and migrant workers displaced by imperialism and local reactionaries. The worsening crisis of imperialism, as you mentioned, forces people to look for places often far from home in order to survive. Traveling and finding places to work and live is a basic human right. However, due to the worsening crisis of imperialism, millions of people, hundreds of millions around the world are forced to leave their home country and regions because of conflict and war, poverty, natural disasters, among other reasons, and must find alternative places to survive. As victims of imperialist war and colonialist plunder, diaspora refugees and migrant workers are potentially part of the growing people's movement fighting against imperialism and its cohorts, and in strengthening international solidarity. It is a task of Commission 15 to bring the diaspora refugees and migrant workers to the ILPS and provide members with the tools such as research studies, conducting fora as we are today, webinars and conferences to understand and grasp the importance of being organized and being part of the national movement in their home country. Likewise, the Commission encourages migrants to help strengthen solidarity with the people's movement in the destination country where they are and to be part of the global movement fighting against imperialism.
As ILPS Chairperson Len Cooper mentioned, today's online forum will be conducted in a talk show format where a set of questions are prepared and raised during the actual webinar for the main speaker. Aside from the main speaker, there will be a set of reactors who will give a short response to the inputs provided by the main speaker. Afterwards, participants will be given the chance for questions and interventions as well.
Thank you, Paula. So now it is our honor and privilege to introduce to you our main speaker for today. He is the he is the founding chair of the ILPS and has also led the league up to 2019. He is also known as the founder of the Communist Party of the Philippines, a patriot, revolutionary, and internationalist. He has been imprisoned, tortured, and forced into exile. Imperialists and the reactionary Philippine government continue to malign and persecute him for his anti-imperialist and revolutionary stance. Throughout the years, he has also provided very valuable insights in the building of the overseas Filipino movement. He is also currently the chief political consultant of the National Democratic Front of the Philippines. Comrades, please welcome to the chairperson emeritus of the ILPS, Professor Jose Maria Sison. Professor Sison, welcome. If it's okay with you.
Thank you for the welcome. And I would like to express my warmest greetings of solidarity to the host and my co-speakers, Nilufer and Mohammed, and to Chairperson Len Cooper and all colleagues in the International League of People's Struggle, and to all friends who are participating in this webinar.
Thank you, Professor Sison, and again, welcome. If it's okay with you, we would like to go ahead and ask you the questions we prepared on the role of overseas compatriots in national and social liberation struggles. My co-facilitator, Paula, and I will alternate posing each question to you for your responses. That's okay. And then our first question, we'll go ahead and start. Let's see. So the first question that we prepared is it correct to say that the main cause of modern day migration of peoples can be basically rooted to the internal social, economic, and political conditions of their home countries? Can migration of peoples be a barometer of the crisis in countries of origin?
Yes, it is correct to say that the main cause of modern day migration of peoples can be traced to the internal social, economic, and political conditions of their home countries. The migration of peoples is a barometer of the crisis in the country of origin. It is often claimed that even outside crisis conditions, the natural rise in population coupled with a locality's limits and carrying capacity will already drive migration. It is true that as more and more new households arise, while the local resource base does not equally expand, they will usually outmigrate to nearby areas with more livelihood opportunities. This was probably true in the heyday of feudalism. Under semi-feudal and semi-colonial conditions, however, these migratory tendencies become class stratified, intensified, systematic, and oppressive, and turn not just into indicators, but also as complicating factors of the system's chronic crisis. The severe conditions of exploitation and oppression in semi-colonial and semi-feudal Philippines are the main cause of the migration of at least 10 million documented and undocumented Filipinos to more than 100 countries in the world. In concrete terms, the high rate of unemployment, low incomes, and mass poverty have compelled Filipinos to seek employment in urban areas and abroad. The trend has been worsened by other push factors, such as the neoliberal policy of cheap labor export, land grabbing, large-scale militarization, environmental degradation, and the lucrative business of labor and recruitment. So the causes that are not entirely internal to a country, but you have the external force, US imperialism imposing the neoliberal policy. The gravity of the socioeconomic crisis of the ruling system is the most conspicuous factor of forced migration. The migration of 10 million Filipinos means that a sizable proportion of the country's working age population cannot be employed in the Philippines. In fact, the Philippine Statistics Authority of the Philippine government considers overseas Filipino workers as no longer part of the country's official labor force of 48.8 million. They are not even counted as part of the country's working age population of 75.1 million people. Both figures are as of June 2021 estimates. As of June 2021, The Philippine Statistics Authority Labor Force Survey shows that the COVID lockdowns started to ease up. Another 10.2 million Filipinos stayed in the country, or more than 1/5 of the official labor force were either unemployed or underemployed. The PSA estimated high employment rate of 93.8% as of June 2021 is empty propaganda, because first, it includes what it underestimates as underemployed at 14.2%. And of course, the huge mass of seasonal farm workers and odd jobbers in both rural and urban areas. And second, it discounts from the labor force such major categories of de facto unemployed as housewives, those who have given up the job seeking, or those still listed as overseas workers but have been stranded or repatriated due to COVID shutdowns and layoffs. The distribution of those employed is supposed to be 18.1% in industry, 24.2% in agriculture, and 57.6% in the service sector as of June 2021. Is there any interruption? In each sector, most of those employed have no job tenure and receive subhuman incomes. The service sector is the most notorious category for concealing the underemployed and odd jobbers from the surplus population or reserve army of labor from both rural and urban areas. I think we can proceed to the next question.
Thank you, Professor Sison. Our next question is, how do the crises of global monopoly capitalism shape modern-day migration? And how has the current neoliberal framework exacerbated forced migration?
For context and comparison with current migration trends, let me share some historical trends in the capitalist era. Countries that have undergone the process of capitalist industrialization through the 18th and 19th centuries, from Europe to America, Russia and Japan, for example, have experienced massive migration from their countrysides to their respective cities and industrial zones. This is because whenever capitalism is allowed to run rampant, that process is one of the easiest ways for generating cheap labor for the burgeoning industries, and also for freeing the land to be turned into capitalist farms, mines, industrial facilities, and new towns connected by road and rail. We only have to be reminded of the enclosures, first in England, then in other European countries, which essentially resulted in forced migrations, first to rural towns, then to cities. The requirements of imperialism from the late 19th century through the entire 20th and early 21st centuries has further intensified and globalized these migration trends. Remember that the USA relied not only on freed southern slaves and migrants from the poorer countries of Eastern and Southern Europe for its heavily industrialized East and Midwest, but also on very cheap coolie gangs from China and its Philippine colony to fill up labor scarcity in the fast developing West Coast, Hawaii, and Alaska, to be followed later by Latin American migrants. The crisis of global monopoly capitalism continues to shape modern day migration. The problem of stagflation arose in the US as a result of the crisis of domestic overproduction in the 1970s, aggravated by the reconstruction of industries in Western Europe and Japan, which had been devastated by World War II. The US economy was also distorted by massive war production, deployment of hundreds of overseas military bases, and wars of aggression. Neoliberalism was a French trend of thought until it was adopted by US imperialism as the fake solution to the problem of stagflation. At the core of this problem was the decreasing income of the working class and therefore decreasing demand for consumer goods. The US made the other traditional imperialist countries follow its lead through the Washington Consensus, the IMF, World Bank, and the GATT series of talks leading to the WTO in adopting the neoliberal policy regime. This policy regime is founded on the dogma of unbridled greed, that the monopoly bourgeoisie is the creator of wealth and jobs, and that it must have the utmost freedom to accumulate and centralize capital in its hands. The objective supposedly is to undermine firmly to undermine and weaken the working class and the trade union movement by attacking job security and trade union rights, press down wages, decrease taxes of corporations and individual investors, cut back on labor benefits and social services, liberalize trade and investments, privatize public assets and abuse public debt for the private benefit of the monopoly banks and firms. Since its adoption in 1979 by the US and other imperialist countries, neoliberalism has accelerated the extraction of surplus value from the working class by the monopoly bourgeoisie and has degraded socioeconomic conditions in the traditional imperialist countries. Marxists and most bourgeois sociologists alike are agreed that the neoliberal assault was one of the main causes of the marked decline in trade union gains, workers' rights, and the strength of the workers' movement as a whole in the industrial capitalist countries. In the underdeveloped countries like the Philippines, neoliberalism teamed up with neocolonialism to further disemploy and impoverish the people and increase rapidly the number of the unemployed, vulnerable to recruitment for cheap labor export alongside the export of cheap raw materials. In certain countries targeted by the US-led war and terror, such as Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, and parts of Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia, the deadly combination of neoliberalism, neocolonialism, and neoconservatism has created humanitarian disasters of horrific proportions, the most visible symptoms of which, such as militarized refugee camps, mass treks by land and sea, and breakdown of social services are just the tip of the iceberg. Neoliberalism also teamed up with modern revisionism in the former socialist countries to accelerate the restoration of capitalism and the domestic exploitation and export of cheap labor from these countries. Some former socialist countries of Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union, such as Poland, the Balkans, including former Yugoslavia, and the Ukraine, have turned into major pools of migrant labor for the more industrialized countries of the European Union.
Thank you, Professor Sison. We have a third question now. Is modern day migration therefore forced migration in essence? What do you say to agencies who claim that migration is an individual choice, positive, and can be a tool for national development, or that migration is a natural phenomenon born of globalization?
Modern day migration is forced migration in essence. What can be more forcible than be compelled to accept cheap and risky employment abroad and separation from one's family under the pain of unemployment, hunger, and death? When they get employment abroad, the migrant workers are liable to get the dirtiest and lowest paid jobs and become easy prey to the violation of fundamental human rights and basic democratic rights. State and private agencies are lying when they claim that migration is an individual choice, positive, and can be a tool for national development, or that migration is a natural phenomenon born of globalization or professional advancement. There is the superficial appearance of free individual choice, only because the migrant workers apply individually for recruitment and travel, even if the overseas migrant worker usually has the advantage of being able to converse in English over the far less educated seasonal farm workers and general run of odd jobbers in the Philippines. The false illusion of free choice is also strengthened in a handful of cases where the migrants are the lucky few recipients of graduate school scholarships, scientists and engineers, health professionals, top corporate personnel, or long-term diplomatic posts, or of wealthy Filipinos expanding their overseas interests, which are certainly a small part and not representative of the international migration flows. In the underdeveloped and less developed countries, which are the largest source of cheap migrant labor, there is the official rationale that migration is a tool for national development, but the foreign exchange earnings of the migrant workers have been used entirely or mainly for import-dependent consumption, for guaranteeing the neoliberal credit for building shopping malls and skyscrapers, and for foreign debt repayment by the states, seen as a systematic social phenomenon and not merely as individual decisions. Migration reveals many levels of being forcible, even in the absence of open state coercion. Social conditions may be so severe and ruling class interests so contrary, especially in the face of environmental disasters and armed conflicts, that entire communities are obliged to relocate elsewhere. In the extreme, forced migrations are the direct result of state law and armed coercion used to achieve concrete ruling class aims, such as when the US government herded Native American tribes into reservations, or when Nazi Germany herded entire Jewish populations into concentration camps. Let us recall the long record of modern imperialist states in committing such crimes amounting to genocide or ethnocide. Even the UN World Food Program acknowledges that there is a wide continuum of causes and types of migration, in which the category at one pole, conveniently called economic migration, migration by choice, gradually blends into forced migration, migration out of necessity at the other pole. A key finding in a 2019 UN World Food Program report was that hunger and armed conflict were the key drivers of migration. The report stated, countries with the highest level of food insecurity coupled with armed conflict have the highest outward migration of refugees. Additionally, when coupled with poverty, food insecurity increases the likelihood and intensity of armed conflicts. Migration is indeed a conspicuous phenomenon related to the imperialist policy of neoliberal globalization and the warlike character of imperialist states. But it is not something that is unavoidably natural. Patriotic and democratic peoples and governments in underdeveloped countries can decide to become independent of imperialist and reactionary dictates, pursue their own economic development through national industrialization and genuine land reform, and on that basis, ensure democratic governance, justice, and peace. While we view migration, especially in the massive scales we see today, as objectively driven by the mechanisms of imperialism, we should realize that it also triggers strong pushbacks and complex cross currents within host countries. These include racial or ethnic conflicts, which the ruling classes manipulate for their own ends. anti-immigrant laws and sentiments, and even harsher border controls and police restrictions, especially in times of economic and political crisis. The anti-immigrant pushbacks in the US and European Union, which were already simmering by the late 1990s, became prominent starting in 2015 to 2016 and further tightened during the COVID lockdowns of 2020 to 2021. These counter trends bear close watching for their possible long-term effects, both among migrant peoples in the host countries and on the social economies of their homelands.
Thank you, Professor Sison, for that response. Our fourth question for you today is how best to solve the problem of forced migration? How much of it can be through reforms or as international agencies will say, management of migration? Isn't social revolution the real answer to this?
The best way for the Filipino people and other peoples in underdeveloped countries to solve the problem of forced migration is to assert and realize full national independence from the dictates of imperialism and its puppets, and to carry out a policy of economic development through genuine land reform and national industrialization that would immediately generate jobs for the huge number of unemployed and underemployed. Under the aegis of a truly democratic state, economic development would sustainably provide decent wages, health and housing benefits, and other social services that the people in underdeveloped countries have long urgently needed, but for many generations only saw such comforts in more developed countries. Endless calls for reforms or reformism and availment of super profits seeking foreign investments or so-called assistance by pro-imperialist agencies and their NGO agents will not enable the people of underdeveloped countries to achieve a situation where they can achieve economic development. The people and their revolutionary forces in the said countries have to achieve national and social liberation through the People's Democratic Revolution.
Great. We now move to the fifth question. In the context of rapid migration of peoples, has it changed the principle of waging revolution in national boundaries under the era of imperialism?
The rapid migration of peoples has not changed the principle of waging revolution within national boundaries in the era of imperialism. On one hand, such migrations do create potentially more favorable conditions for a common working class consciousness cutting across multiple nationalities and ethnicities and developing a strong inter-imperialist and developing a strong internationalist orientation. But even if we are proletarian revolutionaries, we do not advocate world wars or cross-border wars to win the world proletarian revolution. We remain committed to the principle that social revolutions are carried out within national boundaries unless the imperialist powers carry out the cross-border war and they need to be rolled back, as in the case of the Soviet counteroffensive against the German and other fascists in World War II, or in the more recent cases of the Kurdistan and Palestine peoples who are still fighting for a national homeland. And so the revolutionary armed struggle have had to extend across certain national borders to adjacent territories or refugee camps in neighboring countries. The migrants are usually a minority in relation to the host people. They can and must support the revolutionary struggles of the host people, but must not take away from them, the host people, the revolutionary initiative and main effort to carry out the social revolution. The migrants have the right and duty to pay attention to their own needs and democratic rights and to support the revolutionary struggle in their motherland. But they also have the right and duty to support the host people in the revolutionary struggle in the spirit of anti-imperialist solidarity and proletarian internationalism. We do realize that as the second and third generations grow up from migrant families and host countries, the expected tendencies for migrant roots to fade and for host country ethnic identities to predominate. But this is not an automatic process. The US experience, for example, has good examples of migrants retaining their ethnic identities and close ties with their respective motherlands. These identities and ties may remain robust after many generations or even become a steady source of national pride and solidarity through appropriate types of social institutions, organizations, and traditions. Many of these have developed closely with the anti-imperialist and democratic or revolutionary movements in the original homelands.
Thank you, Professor Sison. Again, our sixth question for you is, do you think that national and social liberation movements should pay attention to arousing, organizing, mobilizing their compatriots who migrated to other countries? Can they, overseas compatriots, be considered a positive force for national revolution?
Definitely, national and social liberation movements should pay attention to arousing, organizing, and mobilizing their compatriots who have migrated to other countries. The overseas compatriots are a positive force for the national revolution in their motherland. Marx and Engels, living in exile in their own historical time, followed by Lenin and the Russian emigre revolutionaries, had all experienced migrant life in other countries of Europe. Many Asian revolutionary leaders of the 20th century, such as Zhou Enlai, Zhu De, and Ho Chi Minh, also became politically active while working or studying in Europe, US, or Japan. They too saw the great value of arousing, organizing, and mobilizing their compatriots and support groups from other nationalities. Together with their respective proletarian parties, they relied on overseas mass organizations and encouraged all kinds of actions and linkages in support of the struggle in the homeland. Being aroused, organized, and mobilized to support the revolutionary struggle in their motherland, the overseas compatriots can gather from among themselves moral and material support for the aforesaid struggle, as well as from the host people and other migrant peoples in the host country. Gathering moral support involves information and education campaigns and obtaining expressions of political and moral solidarity and support. Gathering material support involves realizing solidarity partnerships and exchange of publications and visits between organizations of the motherland and host country, and obtaining financial, technical, and other forms of material assistance for the people in need.
Thank you for that. But for surely there are reactionary classes and revolutionary classes among overseas migrants. What then should be the guiding principle in organizing migrants?
Indeed, there are reactionary classes and revolutionary classes among overseas migrants. We need to recognize the fact that there are migrants who belong to the exploiting classes, including highly paid diplomatic officials, business representatives, and top-level corporate professionals, and students of various ideological persuasions. But the overwhelming majority of migrants belong to the working class and lower middle class. They have a strong tendency to side with their own class, although it's often observed that rank-and-file migrant workers in an advanced capitalist country may well display middle-class lifestyles upon their return to the homeland. This is unsustainable. Generally, the objective material conditions and their exposure to class politics will continue to favor conditions for arousing, organizing, and mobilizing them. The guiding principle in organizing migrants is to bring them together in accordance with the national and democratic program. We need to promote and develop the united front in which we rely mainly on the working people, win over the intelligentsia and other urban petty bourgeois, and take advantage of splits among the upper classes and reactionaries. While we are mindful of classes and the class tendencies of those who belong to them, let us be meticulous enough to know that there are individuals who do not think and behave according to their class origin. There are communists who have upper class origins. There are a few workers and students who are anti-communist and opposed to the National Democratic Movement. There are also individuals who do not know any better at some time, but who can be subsequently enlightened and become patriotic and progressive.
Following that is, should the struggle of compatriots in host countries therefore be principally focused on supporting and contributing directly to the national liberation movement of their home country? How about the struggle for the rights and welfare of their communities in their host countries?
I presume that most of overseas compatriots, especially the wage earners, are preoccupied with their wage and living conditions and with paying attention to the rights and welfare of their community. They tend to join the trade unions of their host country when they are recruited, and also the Migrant Workers Association, which tends to be the biggest organization of migrants. We also recognize certain sectoral particularities among compatriots, such as among women and youth, who will have their distinct sectoral interests and issues. There can also be a strong interest in their homeland's culture, language, or ethnic traditions, or the even more particular issues and concerns of their home regions or hometowns. Within every form of migrant organization, there is a calibration and the focus of compatriots on supporting and contributing directly to the national liberation movement of their home country. At any rate, compatriots who join our migrant organizations tend to be more concerned and militant about Philippine issues and the national liberation movement in the Philippines than those migrant compatriots who do not join the National Democratic Migrant Organizations.
Thank you, Professor. We just have a few more questions left for you, and then we'll move to the reactors. But we wanted to ask, what contributions can overseas compatriots make to the advance of national and social liberation of their home countries?
As I have earlier pointed out, the overseas compatriots can gather moral and material support from their own ranks and from the host people and other migrant peoples in order to contribute to the advance of the revolutionary struggle for national and social liberation in their countries. The contributions include expressions and concerted actions of anti-imperialist and democratic solidarity and proletarian international and financial, technical, and other material forms of support and assistance. And just as they can seek the support and of the host people and other people, they should be ready to extend solidarity and support to them.
Similarly, how can migrant organizations contribute to the anti-imperialist, anti-fascist, and democratic struggles in the host countries as well as internationally?
The migrant organizations of various types can contribute to the anti-imperialist, anti-fascist, and democratic struggles in the host countries, as well as internationally, by promoting and developing relations of solidarity and cooperation with the pertinent organizations according to class interest or social concern, and by joining the International League of People's Struggle.
Yes, we hope they join. We have one last question. And this last question is, what is the role of the working class in the host countries in organizing migrants in relation to the liberation movements in sending countries?
The working class in host countries has the role of organizing migrants, both for the purpose of building the working class movement in the host countries, encouraging them to support the revolutionary struggle in their homelands. The working class And unions in advanced capitalist countries have an anti-fascist tradition and socialist aspirations, even as the monopoly bourgeoisie continues to subject them to imperialist, racist, and chauvinist propaganda in order to fracture and pit them against each other along racial, nationality, or ethnic or immigrant lines. The working class movement must counteract the big bourgeoisie's divide and rule policies by stressing the commonality of the workers' economic and political struggles, meaning to say the struggles for trade union rights and the struggles for democracy and against imperialism.
Thank you so much, Professor Sison, for those powerful and insightful responses to our question on today's topic. We would now like to turn to our reactors, and we are first joined by Ms. Nilüfer Koç. Born in Ardahan, Northern Kurdistan, she's a member of the Executive Council, spokesperson for the Commission on Foreign Relations of the Kurdistan National Congress, also known as KNK. Her current primary political focus is the improvement of national dialogue amongst political parties and civil society organizations in Kurdistan. And she spent most of the period from 2013 to 2018 in southern Kurdistan, Kurdistan, Iraq, and Rojava, northeast Syria. Parallel to national unity efforts, Ms. Koç is also active in the international arena in raising awareness of the right to self-determination for the Kurdish people and all ethnic and religious components of Kurdistan. And she is interested and engaged in the active and autonomous participation of women in all fields of society and politics. Since 2011, Ms. Koç is working with the Kurdish women as well on the international level for the international legal and political recognition of feminicide and feminicide as genocide. Ms. Koç came to Germany in 1976 as a child of Kurdish migrant workers and studied biology and political science at the University of Bremen. Welcome, Nilüfer. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Paola. And thank you for the organizers. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and it was a pleasure, honor for me to listen to Professor Sison to understand the general frame of the reason of migrants and solution. What can the migrants do abroad? As Kurds, we have nearly 5 million migrants. 2 million are living in Europe, 1 million in the former Soviet Union, and few thousand in the Arab countries like Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Yemen, and Sudan. And then we have also few 10,000 in Australia, Canada, and the US, and few thousand in South America. So as you see, it's a widespread of the Kurdish community abroad. Obviously, the migration in Kurdistan is a result of the dictatorship in the countries which are colonizers of Kurdistan, like Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. And the reason of the Kurdish migrants or migration is, of course, the war, which is still happening in our country, in our homeland. Since 2015, the numbers of migrants has increased, particularly those from Turkish part of Kurdistan. As you know, Turkey is led by a fascist and dictator like Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And he is committing a policy of genocide in Kurdistan. He wants to have a Kurdistan without Kurds. Therefore, one side with the military power, he is evacuating Kurdish regions in Turkey, but also through the special warfare, which has a specific organization and manipulating people to leave the country to have a better future in Europe. This kind of special warfare is also happening or planned by the Turkish government. And also the migration from the north and east Syrian part of Kurdistan, particularly in Rojava, it's a serious problem now. In the beginning of year, Turkey was weaponizing water. So as you know, the water supplies for Syria and Iraq are springing from the Turkish part of Kurdistan, and Turkey built in the last years dams on the rivers. And in the beginning of the year, when the people start to work in the agriculture, they cut the water through the dams. So it caused problems of electricity and also drinking water, which became a crisis. And the aim of the Erdogan regime was to provocate the communities against the administration, the autonomous administration of North and East Syria. Still, we have the problem to solve it, and also cutting the water supply to Iraq through the river of Tigris is a problem, which led the Arabic areas of Iraq becoming a problem. We have also the problem of weaponizing of water by the Iranian regime through the special channels they built on Kurdish rivers, supplying water to the Persian areas, which led to poverty, so people cannot work on their land, so they're forced to leave the homeland, and there's also internal migration to the Iranian cities like Tehran, the capital, also forced migration of Kurds from Turkey to the Turkish cities, because the plan is if you force the Kurds to the mainly Turkish inhabited cities like Istanbul, Ankara, it's easier to assimilate the Kurds. So this is a result of the war we are facing, and also we have a problem now this year, particularly in the Iraqi part of Kurdistan, and the Kurdish leadership, the ruling class in Kurdistan, Iraq, are kind of Kurdish bourgeoisie, led by families, and the exploitation of the country led to poverty even in the Iraqi part of Kurdistan, which is really a part of autonomy of federal Iraq. And this year, 28,000 people left Iraqi Kurdistan. A few thousand came recently to the Poland-Belarus border. The aim was here to the forcing migration to Europe through the Kurdish ruling class is also a serious problem now. I would say stopping this kind of migration for us in first hand needs to overcome the Turkish fascism and the Turkish anti-Kurdish problem. And Turkey, for example, weaponizing water is accepted as a crime according to the international law. And also Turkey has signed agreements with Iraq and Syria in 1963 not to weaponize water. But as we know, none of the dictators are taking care of rules or agreements they signed. It's happening also in Turkey. What we do when people came to Europe particularly, or going to the Arab countries or to Caucasus or to Russia, we immediately organize the people. Through the organization we have everywhere. So the Kurds abroad have thousands of organizations. Immediately when they get information that people came to refugee camps in Germany, UK, France, wherever, so people are trying to politicize the migrants. And amongst them also people who have been politically active. The reason they left their country is because of the dictatorship and fascism in Turkey particularly. When they come to European countries, they immediately continue with their political struggle. And the 2 million Kurds in Europe particularly, they are very active, and I would say the Kurdish movement have achieved the biggest migrant organization in Europe, particularly in Germany, because they're living 1.5 million Kurds. And these people have been politicized through the Kurdish freedom movement, and they understand that the Kurdish problem was caused by the European imperialist states led by France and Britain in the 20th century. And what they do, every Kurd in Germany or in UK, in France, became natural diplomats of Kurds. What they do is raising awareness about the Kurdish problem amongst the communities in the countries where they live, and keeping bridges with, with the organization who are also critical to the powers, to the states. Let's say women's movements, environmental movements, anarchists, anti-fascists, or working class. So the Kurds are trying to keep bridges also by them creating new forms of grassroots organization mixed by Kurds and non-Kurds in European countries. And the most powerful part of the Kurds in the abroad is whenever something happening in Kurdistan, so you have few thousand people who are immediately able to be mobilized. Let's say we had a recently problem that Turkey used chemical weapons against the Kurdish freedom fighters in northern Iraq. So what they did was protesting this in front of the organization which is responsible for controlling non-use of chemicals in The Hague in Netherlands. Few hundred Kurds immediately went there and started to protest and write letters to the organizations so that Turkey is violating human rights. Turkey is violating international law by the use of chemical weapons. And so, since 22 years, day and night, the Kurds are active in Strasbourg, which is the center of the Council of Europe and responsible for the prison island where the Kurdish leader Abdullah Öcalan is being held. Since 22 years, the Kurds are fighting in Strasbourg, bringing awareness to the responsibility of the Council of Europe where Turkey is a member. And I would say after 22 years, in the end, this year we achieved to bring Öcalan's case to the Committee of the Ministers of the Council, which is the government of the Council of Europe. After 22 years resistance in Strasbourg, we achieved to bring the cause of Öcalan to the agenda of the government of Council of Europe. So you see the migrants, when they're politicized and well organized, they can achieve a lot. It will take time. And I think the main reason why the European countries who has trade relation with Turkey, diplomatic relation with Turkey, military relation with Turkey, why they keep silence in case of Turkey's committing of war crimes, crimes against humanity in northern Syria, in northern Iraq, and also in northern part of Kurdistan, Turkey, is that Turkey is still a very important or vital leg of the NATO in Middle East. So the main reason why they keep silent by the crimes committed by Turkey is that Turkey is the only Muslim state in the Middle East being member of the NATO. So Turkey is used to design the region according to the benefits of the imperialist states. And indeed, the Kurds with the alternative, which they created already in the last 30 years or 40 years, I would say the model of democratic socialism in different parts of Kurdistan, the Kurds became a threat to the NATO with their alternative. The peak of the success of the Kurdish revolution have become very known after the revolution in Rojava 2014, when Kurdish fighters defeated by the imperialist state created army of the Islamic State. So the Kurds have been able to defeat the threat to humanity in two parts of Kurdistan, in northern Iraq and in Syria and Rojava. And also during the whole war, the Kurds have been able to implement new solutions locally, but which can give also answer to many of the problems in the region. So for example, opening the gates also for domestic migration from Damascus, Homs and Raqqa to the Kurdish region of Syria. Politicizing them, giving them the free space for their own organization, but also organizing them, bringing awareness of the coexistence of different ethnic groups. So this solution of coexistence of ethnic groups in Syria and in Turkey, which we're implementing, is of course a problem or seen as by the imperialist states as a threat to their ideology, which is based on nationalism, manipulating the communities against each other, and we are moving against this ideology of the imperialist states. That's why they brought the PKK on the list of terrorist organization of the European Union's list and US list, and also banned in Germany. So the power of the PKK to be able to also mobilize the 2 million Kurds in Europe and also the million in the former Soviet Union made it also powerful abroad. So I would say each Kurd who have been politicized by the movement is acting as a natural Kurdish diplomat, but all of them are organized in different organizations according to their needs, We have Organization of Intellectuals in Europe, and then we have nearly 12 Kurdish satellite TV channels, hundreds of Kurdish homepages. So using the online world is also part of the new Kurdish struggle in Europe, particularly also in homeland. So I think organizing the migrants aboard can also put pressure on the governments who caused the Kurdish problem in our homeland. These are the European countries and also the US, which is still under Joe Biden, seeking Turkey as a natural ally of the NATO. So in the abroad, we have the opportunity to build up a new grassroots organization with thousands of Europeans who are also critical to their own government's hegemonial policies. So I think in this way, for us it's important to make the migrants independent from the states in which they became refugees. So it means that we have to offer also opportunities for them, for their needs. But that way in bureaucracy, because applying for being a refugee, it's a long procedure of bureaucracy, so we have to help them. We have Kurdish lawyers organization who are taking care of these refugees. And then whenever there's a need of them, so we have to follow up the needs. And also the diaspora or the Kurds abroad are very important to finance the struggle in the homeland. So that Kurdish freedom movement can become independently in economic way. So not being dependent on any of the states. So that's why the role of the migrants outside of the country is very important in financing the struggle. And also whenever something happens in Kurdistan now recently we have a problem of flood in different parts of Kurdistan. What is happening is that Kurds are collecting immediately money and sending them to the people in need in different parts of Kurdistan. When there was a challenge of pandemic in North and East Syria, what was done was the Kurdish physicians have sending medical treatment instruments to the region. So these make the Kurdish movement at all very independent in all ways, I would say, in all fields of the needs. And I think it's a part of continuation of the revolution outside of the country. So wherever you have everywhere the model of democratic confederalism, in Europe, of course, in the frame of the law in Europe, and it's offering a lot of opportunities for organizing the migrants in European countries. And I think in the last 40 years, I would say the only organization in Germany or in Europe which is not affected by state policy in the European countries is the Kurdish movement. And the Kurdish movement to organize the migrant workers, the political refugees, and the normal people who have become victims of a special warfare of Turkey and Iraq and Syria.
Thank you, Ms. Niloufar. We have to wrap up in a minute or so. If you want to make any last comment in the last minute.
I agree with Professor Sisson's statement or the analysis that, of course, the migration is a result of the imperialist strategy of designing the world from new. And our land, Kurdistan and Middle East, our Kurdistan specifically, but the whole Middle Eastern region became a center of the war. So there is power clashes between different states. The US, Russia, China is now involved also. Turkey on the regional level, the competition between Iran and Turkey, and the competition between Turkey and Arab states over the Kurdish land makes the problem very, very complicated. But the result is that all agreed to have a Kurdistan without Kurds. And for that, the special warfare, the military clashes in the civilian areas, the use of Turkish drones, which attacking civilians directly in the city centers, is a part of threatening the people, scaring the people to leave the country. So the migration problem in Kurdistan is a result of the war, which depends to the imperialist strategy and implemented by Turkey as a ally after NATO in the region. And I would say the Kurds are not the only victims of this problem. Turkey is also active in Northern African countries, bringing everywhere destabilization and also military intervention in Yemen, in Sudan, and also creating problems, social problems to Islam as a political instrument in Egypt, in Lebanon, everywhere in North Africa and Middle East. So it's not the issue just of the Turkish state. We have to see Turkey as a continuation of the NATO's policy in Middle East, to create Middle East as a headquarter for the NATO's strategy towards Asia Pacific. So in this, we have to come together, since our problems can be solved if we are in a stronger way in solidarity.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Niloufar Koç, for those comments and the messages of solidarity, the role of migrants abroad from Kurdistan, connecting with the struggle in the homeland, Kurdistan, and throughout the region, also the analysis. So very powerful comments, the reactions to Professor Sison's powerful insights and responses to our questions. So we want everyone in the forum today to prepare your questions. There will be a question and answer portion. Hopefully we have enough time for a few questions. So you can either prepare the questions to share yourself or put them in the chat box, and we will be able to compile the questions for our main speaker, Professor Sison, and the reactors. But we now like to turn to Gabriela Malaspin. She was the co-chairperson of New York Boricua Resistance, which has a focus on the issues happening on the archipelago of Puerto Rico. New York Boricua Resistance is an organization that exists to educate, organize, and mobilize the Puerto Rican diaspora and its allies in New York City towards an independent and anti-capitalist Puerto Rico. Gabriela?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me well? Okay. Thank you so much. I'm incredibly honored to be here. I'm incredibly honored to listen to all these speakers. And thank you all so much. I want to use this as an opportunity to circle back to one of Professor Jose Maria Sison's points, how migration is not voluntary, but rather forced. This is especially clear in Puerto Rico. For 123 years, the United States, in conjunction with Puerto Rico's puppet government, has enacted policies for the benefit of American imperialists to the detriment of Puerto Ricans in the archipelago. In the 1940s, the US rapidly industrialized Puerto Rico as part of a program referred to as Operation Bootstrap. Operation Bootstrap was designed to turn Puerto Rico into kind of an attractive destination for American and foreign investors. And they did this by implementing like lucrative tax benefits, reorienting Puerto Rico into a tourism-based economy, and implementing rapid industrialization. And while this provided economic growth for a period of time, what this did is it created a reliance on foreign investment and on a reliance on multinational entities that was unsustainable for Puerto Rico, as you'll see kind of later into the 21st century. So the United States also recognized that while Operation Bootstrap was like creating this economic boom, the United States also recognized that they needed to incentivize Puerto Ricans to leave the island, to control the population and ensure that this like Puerto Rico remained a playground for investors. So the federal government began sponsoring mass migrations to New York City and other places throughout the Northeast of the United States for Puerto Ricans to work in industries such as cigar factories, textiles, and farms. This is why you see such a significant concentration of Puerto Ricans in areas such as Bushwick, New York. Around this time, there's also like the more violent elements of this type of displacement, where you have U.S. doctors sterilizing about 40% of Puerto Rican women and enacting birth control experimentation on Puerto Rican women. So both to keep the population under control, as they would say, and to ensure that there were effective workers that would not have to rely on childcare. Essentially kind of implementing genocidal policies. Today, we are facing another wave of mass migration in Puerto Rico. As of 2018, over 60% of Puerto Ricans live in the United States compared to only 30% who live in Puerto Rico. In the last decade alone, Puerto Rico has lost over 11% of its population. It was in 2006 that the number of overseas compatriots in the United States surpassed the number of those in the archipelago. This was due to a number of factors. As I kind of mentioned earlier, Operation Bootstrap made us dependent on foreign investment. And when they eliminated some of these tax exemptions, like the 936 tax exemptions, many US manufacturing companies left Puerto Rico because they could no longer benefit from these tax incentives. And it is exactly the crisis of capitalism and colonialism under the US that forces so many Puerto Ricans to leave. This is further exacerbated by the imposition of the Fiscal Control Board, also known as La Junta de Control Fiscal, a group that is this is a group that's appointed by the American government. It is not elected by the people of Puerto Rico. Whose primary, oh, sorry.
Sorry about that. Please continue, Gabriela. And if participants can remember to mute your microphones. Sorry about that, Gabriela.
Oh, no worries. Sorry, where was I? Essentially, this Fiscal Control Board ensures that we pay our $72 billion debt by slashing social services. So hundreds of schools have been closed down, hospital wings have shuttered. Our electrical grid has been privatized by this American-Canadian venture called Luma. And austerity policies are the primary reason why people have left. As highlighted before, this isn't, when you talk to Puerto Ricans who have left the archipelago, they'll largely say they left because the wages on the island were low compared to what you can find in the American core. There's so many heart-wrenching stories of families with special needs children who have had to leave Puerto Rico because there isn't enough investment in services to serve children or people with special needs, and they're often unable to access the services they need. Or they've left because our infrastructure has deteriorated to a point where people feel unsafe on the island in the event of a natural disaster, as we saw with events like Hurricane Maria and the multiple earthquakes that happened into early 2020. I want to highlight how reforms are not and have never, reforms to address the migration crisis are not and have never worked in Puerto Rico. Often these reforms rely on creating additional tax incentives or maybe providing additional money to small businesses. During the time of Hurricane Maria, the government sponsored a campaign called Yo No Me Quito, which roughly translates to I won't leave. And while this was a campaign that supposedly was going to extol the virtues of remaining in Puerto Rico, its true purpose was to alienate the archipelago from the diaspora by implying that those who had left the island didn't care about Puerto Rico. They used this campaign to foster contempt between those who remained on the island and those who left, effectively weakening our revolutionary efforts. Currently, the government has considered various tax incentives to entice Puerto Ricans to stay on the island, yet these reforms are a farce. It is impossible to achieve economic sustainability for the people of Puerto Rico while under American colonialism. And we see this, for example, pharmaceutical corporations and multinational entities make billions of dollars on the island and reap billions of dollars in profits, yet that money never trickles down to the general population. We have had tax benefits like Act 20 and Act 22 to entice white colonizers to live here for more than a decade. Yet a report from el Centro de Periodismo Investigativo from Puerto Rico concluded that after more than a decade of these policies, little, if any, of the wealth these recipients have created for themselves has been reinvested in the local economy. We have been taught for centuries that the reason why Puerto Rico faces poverty is because we don't try hard enough. But this is a lie. It's because American imperialists have turned Puerto Rico into a tax haven for the rich at the expense of the people. Social revolution is the only solution for Puerto Rico. It is only by abolishing the different colonial structures, such as the such as the Fiscal Control Board, the tax codes that benefit wealthy investors, the debt crisis, etc., that we will achieve true liberation and prosperity as a people. It is only when we eliminate capitalism and imperialism on the island and retain our independence as a nation that we will be truly free. I want to highlight that, as Professor Jose Maria Sison indicated, overseas compatriots play a critical role in their home countries. In the case of Puerto Rico, it is essential for the diaspora and the island to be able to come together and unite in our revolutionary efforts. With more than 60% of people, Puerto Ricans living in the diaspora, we must continue to strengthen our links. There are so many of the colonial entities are located in the United States. Today, right now, we're actually mobilizing against the Fiscal Control Board in New York City at 1 Bowling Green. Many of the vulture funds are located around Midtown Manhattan. Daily, I see signs that revolutionary efforts in Puerto Rico are growing in power. The students of the University of Puerto Rico have consistently been on strike against the privatization of our electrical grid. Tens of thousands of Puerto Ricans marched in the streets when power outages caused by Luma occurred. We managed to oust Governor Ricardo Rosselló in 2019, and in 2020 was the first time that neither of the major political parties achieved less than 40% of the popular vote. Revolution is possible, and it is happening right before our eyes. Lastly, I want to emphasize how we must continue to work in conjunction with other movements for liberation across the globe, and how anti-imperialist organizations are key to this. The International League of People's Struggles allows us to connect with comrades around the world and build alongside each other. Here in NYC, we have forged close relationships with overseas compatriots from Mexico, Palestine, the Philippines, and many other struggles. We recognize that if one of us is not free, none of us are free. My hope is that the links between the diaspora and the archipelago will continue to strengthen across time, and our revolutionary efforts can be amplified. I want us to continue building with other liberation movements and always practice the principle of international solidarity. I truly see we will see liberation for Puerto Rico and international liberation within my lifetime. Thank you all.
Thank you, Gabriela, for those remarks, your reminders and updates on how Puerto Ricans are affected by migration as a result of centuries and decades of continued U.S. imperialism. We truly do wish to see Puerto Rico libre one day in our lifetime. We'll continue on to our third and final reactor, who is Mohammed Khatib. He is the European coordinator for the Samidun Solidarity Network for Palestinian Political Prisoners and a member of the Follow-Up Committee for the Palestinian Alternative Revolutionary Path Movement. We turn it over to you now, Mohammed. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, comrades. Thank you, Paula and Terry, and thanks for ILPS Commission 15 for organizing this very important event and bringing us together from Palestine to Puerto Rico to Kurdistan to the Philippines and many others. And I think this is exactly the role of diaspora, and this is how the Filipino community and the Filipino National Liberation Movement, ILPS, NDF, and all others organizations are teaching us this very important how our community and relating our local struggle, national struggle with our diaspora community struggle. And also it's very interesting to hear from Comrade Nulfer from the Kurdistan movement. We always learn from their example and the way they organize and they struggle in Europe. Also, we are in full solidarity with those organizations who are facing criminalization for their local organizations in diaspora, from the Kurdistan movement and many other political organizations who represent a national liberations movement, especially who use armed struggle as a defense of their people's struggle back home and international borders. Also, I want to comment how the significant, or one of the significant cases for the Palestinian community, that we were uprooted from our homeland in 1948. For example, myself, I was born in a refugee camp called Ain al-Hilwi refugee camp in Lebanon, where our community in Lebanon have no right to work, have no right to for housing. We are locked in refugee camps until today. So even us as a Palestinians who were deported to the Arab borders, who lived in Lebanon and Syria and Jordan, we face also this Arab reactionary regime, racist and sectarian regime's policy and this is affecting our community on daily basis. So can you imagine the Palestinian community in Lebanon who have been refugees for more than 70 years, have no right to work and who have no right even for a real movement. Our refugee camp in Hilwi camp, it's a 1 kilo square meter, but we have 150,000 inhabitants. It's a camp sieged by a wall and wires from the Lebanese army and checkpoints. You cannot get in and outside this camp without passing to the Lebanese army and the Lebanese intelligence checkpoints, which is very similar to the apartheid policy that the Zionist regime is using against our people in West Bank and Gaza and in Palestine occupied 1948. But also after the war in Syria and after the revolution and after all the changes in our region and in the Middle East, after the economic crisis in Lebanon, after the siege in Gaza, our community newly became new arrivals as of refugees, deported for the second and third time to Europe. So today we have a huge community in Germany, we have a huge Palestinian community in Scandinavia, in general, in Sweden, in Denmark. We have a huge Palestinian community in the United States. We always have a huge Palestinian community in Latin America. And of course, historically, our community played a very important role of organizing our people in diaspora, connecting our people back home, supporting our people who are doing the intifada, first intifada and second intifada, supporting economically, sending delegations, making awareness. But this was never enough. And this was never really benefitable for our people to struggle back home. That's why we have rise of a Palestinian right wing in Latin America. We have some Palestinian who are going to elections as ministers who are fascist, who are Palestinians. But at the same time, when they are talking about Palestine, they are progressive and leftist because it's easier for them to be as a Palestinian leftist, but back home, because there where he is making money and he is affiliated with a certain class, then he is defending his privilege as a migrant. So it's not only the migrants who can also play a very important role. Also, it's the working class issue. We have a Palestinian migrant bourgeoisie class who are involved with the Zionist enemy regime. And they are the one who are involved of building the Palestinian Authority, who are also today is coordinating in security level with the Zionist enemy. So we have a Palestinian Zionist class as well, who are part of the diaspora and playing a contradiction to our people movement. But also, as Comrade Juma Sison, the interest always and the bigger majority of our people who are the minimum, like the underclasses and the poor people and the new arrivals of refugees who are was born and third generations of refugees. But also this is very interesting for us as Palestinians. We think also as much as we have to connect our struggle with our national borders and back home, but also we understand very well who is our enemy. And we don't see the European Union or the United States of America as a two regimes who are supporting the Zionist regime. Who is occupying us in Palestine? They are white settlers coming from Canada, New Zealand, the United States, Germany, France, and Belgium. They are white settlers. So our enemy is in Europe. We see Tel Aviv and the Zionist movement based in France, based in Germany, based in New York. And this makes us this is push us as a Palestinian to fight this enemy everywhere, because it's not logical for us to lock ourselves in our small ghettos and cities and to fight these imperialist powers that all of the coming from all around the world, occupying this small homeland, and then we are based in their countries, and then we are used as a cheap labor and as a slaves to serve their economy, that they are using the same economy to occupy and colonize us, and then they turn us as a generator of this big factory and machine of colonialism and plunder. So we see a big role for our community to be part of the local struggle, to be part of the local and social organizations, to connect with the other national liberations movement organizations who are based in the home country, but at the same time to take seriously the strategy of fighting and deporting the conflict and the contradiction from our homeland to the enemy homeland. And this is, we think, the main role of our future community that have to play, and the generations of Palestinians who are growing up abroad and in diaspora to create this national liberation program for us as a Palestinian, but also where we play a very important role to defeat the enemy from their homeland, not us, not only over our soil. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. A lot of us have been fighting alongside our Palestinian siblings in places all over the world for the liberation of Palestine and in solidarity with all of our people's struggles. We want to thank you and also to all of the reactors, and of course to our main speaker, Professor Jose Maria Sison, for giving us such powerful insights on the topic of today's forum. We want to remind folks to go ahead and chat in the chat box, post some of your questions. We're about an hour and a half into the forum, so we'll have to wrap up and can only entertain a few questions. We actually had a video about the Palestinian struggle from some filmmakers in Canada that we wanted to share, but what we hope to do is to share that video with the remarks of Professor Sison and all of the reactors with you all after today's forum. So you have the benefit of the wealth of their knowledge and their perspectives on waging struggle at home and abroad. So if folks have questions, go ahead and type them into the chat box. They can be posed to our main speaker, Professor Sison, or any of the reactors. And we have a few prepared just in case, but Paula and I will just ask a couple of them. I think particularly there's a couple for Mohammed and also for Gabriella, and then we can see if we have time for more questions than that, and also for Professor Sison and Nilofer as well. So I have an initial one that we prepared for Gabriella. The current demands or calls of the Puerto Ricans or Boricuans in the diaspora. New York Boricua resistance and other chapters of Boricua resistance have been growing in different parts of the United States. The fiscal board that you mentioned that's governing Puerto Rico is in New York right now. I heard there's an action today. So again, the role of the organizers and the migrants right here today in New York and other parts have a big role to play. And we'll be protesting the fiscal board here in New York. But what are the current calls and demands, or maybe the specific demands on the fiscal board from the New York Boricua resistance?
Right. Thank you very much. So our current demands are, well, for example, it's not just to abolish the fiscal control board, it's also to abolish our debt and to enact reparations for the people of Puerto Rico, because this is not only is this an illegal debt, but we have been consistently, like American imperialists have consistently extracted profit from us for 123 years. We demand like our full independence and the abolition of a capitalist system in Puerto Rico, and we demand restitution for all the historical injustice that has been done to us. So, such as, the forced sterilization of Puerto Rican women, the murder of our political prisoners. We demand liberation for our political prisoners. So I think those would kind of encapsulate our main demands as NY Boricua resistance, and particularly like many anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist organizations in the diaspora.
Thank you, Gabriella. We also have a question from Mohammed. It is, how are the Palestinian migrants helping in the International Criminal Court, ICC case against Israel and the US government?
Well, it's a very long question for me, because we don't, there is no any involvement really in reality for the Palestinian community in raising up these topics or putting out these strategies that the Palestinians want to go to the international court against Israel or to the international, yes. I think this is the game that the Palestinian Authority is playing in its national foreign policy, and a way telling the Palestinians that we are going against Israel. But in fact, when this case will be open in the international court, for example, this will be open against Israel and the Palestinians, and the investigation will be against and what Israel did and what the Palestinian did. The Palestinian people are helping on organizing demonstrations, on organizing a mass organizations, on raising the question of the Palestinian political prisoners, getting involved more in the boycott movement and pushing the Western communities and the local host community where they live is to boycott Israel, trying to get involved with the already exist solidarity organizations for Palestine. When we came recently, for example, to Germany, we saw as a Palestinian, or to Greece, for example, as a Palestinian refugee coming from Syria, we saw already that there is a solidarity movement for Palestine led by the Greek left movement and the communist movement and the trade unions, and also the Kurdish who already exist in Greece since long time, and they are struggling for Kurdistan and Palestine. So we saw this, we learned from those examples. Not all of our community was exposed to the joint struggle between international diaspora communities coming from a different orientations. And this helps us that today I can say the normal Palestinian local popular classes who were locked in refugee camps in the last 70 years, through this catastrophe and through this forced migration to Europe, but gladly our community today is connecting socially with the Kurdish people, with some Filipino people. They are exposed to other struggles and forms of struggles. So I think this is how it's helping our people by getting them more involved in struggling for Palestine. If you are a Palestinian refugee in Lebanon, locked in a refugee camp, similar to a slum, that you have no food and you have no right to work, how you struggle for Palestine? If you don't have electricity and water and basics, what you do in your life? You are struggling to feed yourself. So you have no space to think for Palestine. There was always thinking within the Palestinian traditional right-wing class, spreading within the national liberation movement, especially led by Fatah, that if you leave this refugee camp and if you go to Europe and anywhere else, you are a traitor. And you are leaving your people and you are not committed with your community and you have no commitment for Palestine. What happened showed us the opposite. In the moment when our people arrived to Germany, coming from the siege of Yarmouk camp, and were bombed for 2 years or more, they came and started joining any protest for Palestine. Entire families, they are coming and joining as a family, as the whole household, as coming and joining, for example, a solidarity events or demonstrations. And there they are exposed to the Black struggle, to the racism struggle, and now they are facing another kind of questions. So I think this is how really the Palestinian people are and have to be involved in a struggle, not pushing our cause to be in United Nations and EU institutions and this, because those institutions, we see them as the main enemy of the Palestinian people, not as the one who will give us justice.
Thank you, Mohammed, for that very sobering reflection on the role of us as migrants and as diaspora, and from one diasporic person to another. I just send my solidarity and my love to all Palestinian refugees as well. We also have a question for Nilofer. How are the succeeding generations of displaced Kurdish people developed to get involved in the struggle?
We have now the 4th generation of the Kurdish migrants in the European countries. Through cultural work and folkloristic work, we are beginning with the children until the adults. And we have also recently started to build up Kurdish kindergarten to teach in Kurdish, different Kurdish dialects, not just Kurmanji, but also other dialects. What is important to build our own system according to the legal opportunities in each European country. This is very important for us because we are not looking for a way of confrontation with the states. Since the war is happening in our country, the problem is that the solution must be in the country itself. What the role of the migrants or our community abroad is to strengthen the revolution. It's a back stage of the revolution, the migrants. So, but also taking care that none of the Kurds has to be assimilated by the European culture. And secondly, the people have to understand, even the children have to understand why their parents left the country, where they come from. Always, it's important for us to have the bridge to our roots, where we come from and why we came to the different foreign countries. And the generation we have organization for Kurdish students everywhere in Europe. We have organization of Kurdish academicians everywhere, special women academies, and also when there are social problems in the families, Kurdish families, for example, domestic violence against women, we have our own houses for women. So it's important to be organized autonomously in each state. So to keep your people always mobilized for their country, the homeland, but also providing for their needs. So whether it's financially, because we have also organized Kurdish business people who have to support those who are in need. And by organizing this kind of organization, prevent our people from the European racism. You know, the migrants are used by the right-wing parties and movements in all European countries, and right-wing is a kind of result of the imperialist competition between each state. And as Professor Sisson raised, one of the main instruments for keeping the migrant silence is the increase of the right wing in each European country. So we are preventing our people to be affected by this. And if there's any kind of attack against the Kurds, like it was happened a few years ago in Germany when the German fascists attacked some, I think it was a cafeteria run by Arab, and he killed many of the Kurds and Arabs in the cafeteria. What we did, we are still following this case. Mm-hmm. So this is important to keep the consciousness of our people, so that these are people with value, because the European racism is attacking you as the undeveloped people. Whether in Germany, France, and you see the increase of right-wing parties and this right-wing issue, using the migrants as a problem in their policy, and their strategy is also state policy to cover the real reason of unemployment amongst the German or the French or the UK citizens' unemployment. So fighting against this is also one of our duties, to explain to people that through racism, nationalism, the state is want to defend capitalism and the results of capitalism as a form of unemployment, depression in the society, which is now increasing through the pandemic process of pandemic. So this is always bringing awareness among the people, teaching them through TV channels, whatever is needed. So keeping them always active. But the main problem, we never use the terminology of diaspora. We always say abroad. We never say diaspora. So because we say you have to go back to your country. The solution is in our country, not in Europe. So Europe is the place where our homeland became a problem, like Comrade Mohammed raised also. So the Kurdish cause or the Palestinian cause is created by the Europeans, by the Sykes-Picot Agreement, by the Lausanne Treaty, whatever you call it. So several conferences have been done after the First World War to divide our countries, to bring it under the control of some colonial states. So I think the diaspora, since the Kurdish movement has a huge sympathy, particularly after the revolution in Rojava, so support is really growing amongst particularly the young Europeans. And I think there's also solidarity, strong solidarity for the Palestinians. What can be useful for the future is to bring more the Kurdish and the Palestinian migrants together in the European countries. So since the source of the problem is the same center, the solution has to be then created by us when we come together and strengthen our solidarity. I think this is very important, particularly in Europe or even in the US. There's also the Kurdish huge number of Kurds.
Exactly, and here we are today. Paula and myself here in the United States very much identify with what you talked about. We are the succeeding generations, and that cultural development, the participation in the struggle of our homelands and the solidarity between our movements from Palestine to Puerto Rico to El Salvador, the Philippines, Kurdistan is represented today. We have one last question. So thank you all for sharing that. For Professor Sison, we wanted to ask in particular, many mentioned the different struggles and opportunities for the role of overseas compatriots. We want to ask you for this question and also to give closing comments. This will be the last question. What is the role of overseas compatriots in national elections in the home country? The Philippine elections are coming up, the recent El Salvadoran elections, CSPES has been active on that. So what's the role of overseas compatriots in national elections in home countries like the upcoming one in the Philippines? And then if you want to add any closing remarks, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up.
Thank you for the question. Certainly, the overseas Filipinos have a role to play in connection with the national elections in the Philippines, such as the one that's now coming up for 2022. They do not only have a role to play, they have the right and duty to play that role. They can certainly express themselves on the nature of the electoral process, and then they can comment on the character of the political parties and candidates running, and they have the right also to vote if they wish to vote. The embassies and the embassies and consulates of the reactionary government are supposed to administer overseas voting by Filipinos. Now, let me explain the importance of the role as well as the right and duty of Filipinos to express themselves and even to vote. No, so they must form an opinion on the character of the entire electoral process. It is one dominated by the exploiting classes, particularly by a kind of regime that you cannot trust. No, it is a traitorous, tyrannical, mass murdering, plundering, and swindling kind of regime, the Duterte regime. You cannot trust Duterte that he would keep the elections clean and honest, as he promised to Joe Biden, who scandalously invited him to a to a pretentious summit on democracy. So you have an imperialist pretender to democracy, and you have a fascist puppet, pretender to democracy. So it's important for Filipinos to express themselves on the character and what are the main features of this kind of electoral process in the Philippines. Now, and then it's important to go to the details. What kind of parties are running? And then what are the candidates? Certainly, you can make a general conclusion that the general run of political parties and candidates that run for the highest positions are overwhelmingly reactionary. You can only see a few anti-imperialist or patriotic and democratic personalities running for, let's say, the Senate. You have Nery Colmenares and Elmer Labog, and you have also the progressive party list groups belonging to the Makabayan bloc. But observe that the partyless groups, which used to yield some 6 to 8 members of Congress, of the lower house of Congress, have been hijacked by the political dynasties. And so, you know, I will not be surprised if Duterte will do something something so bad, no, worse, something worse than, you know, reducing what used to be 10 Makabayan members of Congress to just I don't know, probably 6 to 8, no. He can wipe out the entire Makabayan candidates. That's a possibility. So then you might ask the question, why, as a revolutionary, I should be opening to the possibility of voting in this kind of electoral system? Well, the revolutionary movement has a dual revolutionary policy involving dual tactics towards processes of the class enemy. If you were a flag carrier of the Communist Party, it would be very wrong for you to put up a party or run for a position in this kind of ruling system in the Philippines, to participate in this type of election. No? If you were a flag carrier and openly known communist revolutionary, you cannot participate. In the first place, you are banned from participating. It's not even your fault that you are not participating. In the first place, the class enemy bans you from the system. So that should be clear. But then there are two kinds of united front that is possible in the revolutionary movement. No? In the main, you have a united front for armed struggle. That is the main kind of united front that the CPP and other revolutionary forces are carrying out. No? But there is also another kind of united front that is subordinate to that. That is the legal united front. No? But anyway, whether you talk about a united front for armed struggle or for legal struggle, you must consider how you carry that out according to the class line. So in the united front, it's the working class that is the leading class, and it is based mainly on the basic alliance of the working class and the peasantry. That's the first part, no? That's the most important part. Then you win over the middle forces, usually in class terms, usually the urban petty bourgeoisie and the national bourgeoisie. Then another part is to take advantage of the splits among the reactionaries. You take advantage in many ways. Yeah? The stupid Trotskyites think that if you take advantage of splits among your enemy, among the reactionaries, then you become a part of the enemy class. Or let's say if you try to win over the middle forces, you submit yourself to petty bourgeois ideology, or you submit yourself to national bourgeois economic interest. No, that's stupid thinking. The very integrity of the revolutionary movement is first led by the theory and practice of the working class. And then the most reliable base of the working class is its basic alliance with the peasantry. Okay, the fourth part is, why do you go through these parts of the United Front? No, it is to isolate, weaken, and destroy the enemy one by one. No? be that enemy a local reactionary force or an aggressor force. The objective, the fourth part, is to realize the objective of the United Front. Now, of course, in the United Front for Armed Struggle, that is something decided by arms. Then, in the struggle, in the United Front for Legal Struggle, you take advantage of the pretenses of the enemy for democracy, and still, because many people from various classes still go to the elections, it's good to avail of that process somehow, without dropping your revolutionary principle. You allow people, to act in a way that is best for themselves. Let us put it this way: when you really do mass work, you meet workers and peasants. Don't think that they were born communists or revolutionaries. They have all kinds of ideas. They believe in the Catholic Church and so on and so forth. So many, all sorts of ideas. Now, it is the challenge to the communist cadre or the revolutionary mass activists to explain things. You learn from them. First, their conditions and needs, then you will be able to explain what constitutes a higher level of consciousness for their own good. No? You cannot just assume that the workers and peasants are born revolutionaries. You have to do the work. You are a lazy, infantilist Maoist, no? Those who don't do hard work except write online. They think to make revolution is, simply to discover them as pure Maoists, without any kind of social investigation and educational work. No, so how is it that in the real world, why can't the Filipino communists decide to swim the Pacific Ocean to go to the US because he doesn't like airlines owned by monopolies? That's stupid. In the first place, the airline company is constituted mainly by workers and so on and so forth. And just because it is owned by the monopoly capitalists, are you going to do something stupid like swimming the Pacific Ocean to go to the US? No. As a matter of fact, an NPA fighter gets the M16 manufactured by the US in order to finish off US aggressor troops and puppet troops. No, you get means. You get means from the enemy to defeat your enemy, and that's exactly what the exploiting class does. The capitalist takes advantage of the labor power of the worker in order to extract the surplus value, and the working class has all the right to reclaim the total value and of their own work and administer society according to socialism. But you have to struggle for that, and there are stages to go through. So, and this is my way of explaining why the Communist Party does not waste its time telling people don't go to the elections. It's either boycott or participation. No, the electoral process in the Philippines can be used by the communists behind the scenes in order to turn things against the class, against the enemy. But never should the Communist Party endorse the dominant electoral process as something good. No, it is a It is a matter of turning the enemy's weapon against the enemy. It's like seizing the Armalite from the enemy troop in order to shoot him subsequently. So that's the so much discussion on the United Front. Now, the overseas Filipinos can be encouraged by Filipino mass organizations in foreign countries to speak up and comment on the electoral process as a whole and how it's likely going to be rigged. It's important to say right away that the electoral process is going to be rigged. But you give the various forces still believing in the elections to do their best on opposing Duterte. And when Duterte does the rigging, then the people will be ready to rise up, as the Filipino did in 1986. They rose up against Marcos. So you cannot get the people to be angry about the elections if most of the people believed in the elections, they went to the elections, and they don't get frustrated. You don't get a big mass of people who are outraged, ready to do their best against the rigging and the results of the elections. That's what I would say about how important Filipinos being able to speak up against the electoral process, speaking well of the few better candidates and denouncing the whole electoral process and the role of the Duterte ruling clique. So I hope that exhausts the answer to the question.
Yes, we could probably have another 2 hours discussion on this and many of the topics that were brought up today, but I'll turn it to Paula. We're going to go ahead and wrap up, but thank you for those closing comments, Professor Sison.
Yes, thank you so much for making us think about how we engage with the electoral processes, in our homelands and where we are. That's all the time we have for now, though, but we hope to obviously continue these conversations moving forward and to continue building together. We wanted to express our appreciation to everyone who joined us today. We had over 150 participants from around the world for over 2 hours, actually. I wanted to thank personally Terry, my co-facilitator, and we wanted to thank the organizers, the interpreters, the tag team, and of course, Professor Sison and our reactors, Nilofer, Gabriela, and Mohammed, who were just wonderful throughout this. But before we end, we'd like to take a group picture before we stop the live stream. This will be voluntary, so you can turn your camera off or on. It's your choice, but the tech team will guide us and take the group pictures.
Yeah, somebody from the tech team is going to walk us through that, or go ahead and several pages, again, over 150 participants from around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Terry. May we request everyone who is comfortable turning on their videos, you could do that. And we can always choose to raise our fists. Yes. Okay. So for our tech team, we can already start taking pictures on screen. Okay. We will now proceed into, yes.
Should we all say long live international solidarity?
Yes, go ahead. Let's do that.
All right, everyone smile. Long live international solidarity.
Long live international
solidarity.
solidarity.
Long live international solidarity.
Long live.
Long live
Long live international solidarity.
Long live international solidarity.
That's great, everyone. Did we get all of the photos?
Hold on a second. Are we okay? I'm just checking up with my tech team. It's great to see familiar faces and new faces here as well. One more screenshot. Show your, how do you call that? Fighting face. Okay, I'm just waiting for my tech team. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Terry.
Yeah, we'll close. Go ahead and close, everyone. So the event today has been live streamed on the Facebook page of Migrante International. Ray, if you can drop that link again into the chat, the Facebook page of Migrante, and I think ILPS will share it as well. We tried to do a Spanish recording of today's forum so they can be shared with our friends from Latin America and around the world who speak Spanish. So we'll try to share that. And the comments of Professor Sison and all of the reactors, we're going to try to compile those. There's a video on the Palestinian struggle from Canada. We'll try to send all of that to everyone. So please stay tuned for more fora, activities, and actions together with the members and participants in Commission 15 of the ILPS. And we invite all of you today to join the work of Commission 15 of ILPS. As we expect the imperialist crisis to worsen, it is imperative to also heighten our unity in actions. In January, the Commission 15 shall call for a meeting of members to map out our plans. Do we watch out for announcements and details of that meeting in January. So thank you again to everyone. Down with imperialism and long live international solidarity. Have a good rest of your evening, day, morning, and thank you again for coming.